the corporate party I sponsored, my golden child sis started humiliating me, threw a glass at me, called me a stupid loser, and my parents took her side without understanding the situation. I just said okay, but secretly cut them off and stopped sending money. Then all hell broke loose. I'm Jake, 26 years old, and I need to tell you about the complete shit show that went down when I finally stood up to my manipulative sister. My sister Beth made a scene at my promotion party after I refused to let her treat me like an ATEM for the 6th year running. When my parents took her side and blamed me for everything, I made a decision that changed everything. That night, I canceled every payment and completely cut her off financially. What followed was a complete disaster that ended with restraining orders and criminal charges. Let me set the stage for you so you understand exactly what kind of situation I was dealing with. My sister Beth is 22 years old, and she's been operating as a professional leech since the day she turned 18. It didn't start out this dramatic. These things never do. They begin small and gradually escalate until you realize you're trapped in a cycle of financial manipulation. It started during Beth's sophomore year of college when her car broke down unexpectedly. She called me in tears, explaining that she needed $300 for repairs and had nowhere else to turn. I figured this was just normal family helping family, so I sent her the money without hesitation. A few months later, she couldn't make rent because she had blown her grocery money at some music festival. She needed $750 to avoid eviction, and again, I stepped in to help. When her laptop died during finals week and she desperately needed a new MacBook to finish her coursework, I bought her one. At the time, I genuinely believed this was what family members did for each other. I was completely wrong about that assumption. Every single crisis Beth presented to me was positioned as a temporary emergency. Every request came bundled with heartfelt promises that she would pay me back as soon as things got better in her life. The problem was that things never actually got better, because Beth's definition of what constituted a crisis was more fluid than water. Her spring break trip got too expensive? Crisis. She wanted to go to Coachella but hadn't budgeted for it properly? Crisis. Her friends were all getting their nails done professionally and she felt left out of the group? You guessed it. Another crisis. What really started to get under my skin was how skillfully she had learned to weaponize family guilt to get what she wanted. She would say things like, "I guess I'll just have to skip Maya's wedding because I can't afford a proper dress." This would be said about a wedding that was 3 months away, giving her plenty of time to save up for an outfit. But somehow it always became my fault that she couldn't participate in normal adult activities. Beth had essentially turned financial irresponsibility into an art form, and she was getting better at it every year. By year 6 of this pattern, I had essentially become Beth's personal bank account, subsidizing her entire lifestyle without any meaningful appreciation or acknowledgement. I was covering her rent, car payments, insurance premiums, and grocery bills on a regular basis. I was buying textbooks that she never opened, paying for her bar tabs when she went out with friends, covering her Uber rides across town, and handling random emergencies that always seemed to mysteriously occur right before she wanted to go somewhere expensive. When I sat down and calculated everything conservatively, I realized I had blown through approximately $42,000 keeping Princess Beth financially afloat over the years. $42,000 that could have gone toward my own future, my own goals, my own financial security. Instead, it had disappeared into the black hole of my sister's manufactured crises and lifestyle choices. The worst part wasn't even the massive amount of money I had spent on her over the years. What really twisted the knife was watching her social media presence during this entire period. While I was living off instant noodles and coffee, grinding through 18-hour workdays just to make ends meet and support both of us, Beth was posting Instagram stories from bottomless brunch sessions, expensive beach trips, and designer boutique shopping sprees. Her posts were always tagged with inspirational quotes about living your best life and being blessed beyond measure. She was blessed all right. Blessed by my freaking bank account that was funding her entire lifestyle. Meanwhile, I was grinding through 65-hour work weeks at a marketing consulting firm, desperately trying to build a career that could sustain this financial drain. I was taking on garbage projects that nobody else wanted to touch, working with the most difficult clients in the industry, and building my professional reputation one brutal assignment at a time. The marketing world is cutthroat as hell. You're only as good as your last successful campaign, and everyone is constantly fighting for the same limited promotions and opportunities. I spent 2 full years working exclusively with this absolute nightmare of a tech startup client, because nobody else in the firm would deal with them. This meant 18-hour days, constant travel to their offices, and dealing with executives who treated consultants like disposable tissues. They would change project requirements on a whim, demand impossible deadlines, and blame us when their unrealistic expectations weren't met. But I stuck with it because I needed the experience, the reputation, and frankly, the money to keep supporting Beth's lifestyle. The breaking point finally came about 9 months ago when Beth called me sobbing yet again about needing money. This time, she claimed she needed 400 baht for what she called a business opportunity. When I pressed her for details, it turned out to be some MLM bullshit that her friend Kelly was running. Essential oils or makeup or whatever the hell these girls convince themselves constitutes real entrepreneurship. It's not a pyramid scheme, she insisted, through what I was beginning to recognize as completely fake tears. It's network marketing, and Kelly's already making 6 figures from this. I knew Kelly was making 6 figures all right, by scamming people exactly like my sister into buying into these ridiculous schemes. You don't understand business like I do, Beth continued, as if she had some secret knowledge about entrepreneurship. This was coming from a girl who had never held a legitimate job for longer than 4 months. Her entire business expertise came from watching Shark Tank reruns on television. I finally looked at her and said the word I'd never said to her before. No. She completely lost her absolute mind when I refused her request. Beth started screaming at me about how selfish I was and how I had more money than I knew what to do with. She accused me of abandoning family when they needed me most, throwing every guilt trip she could think of at me in rapid succession. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me in a rage, but that wasn't the end of it. She immediately called our parents to tell them I was being cruel and controlling with my money. Mom called me exactly 1 hour later, and I could tell from her tone that she had completely bought into Beth's version of events. "Your sister just needs some support right now," she said. "Can't you help her out just this once?" Just this once. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I've been helping her financially for 6 years straight," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "She's still finding herself. She's only 22 years old," Mom responded, as if Beth's age somehow excused years of financial irresponsibility. Still finding herself. While I was finding ways to pay both our student loans, cover her living expenses, and somehow maintain my own life. That conversation was when I finally realized I wasn't dealing with parents who wanted what was best for both their children. I was dealing with professional enablers who had made their choice about which child's behavior they were going to support. Around this same time, I met Kara at a work conference, and she turned out to be like a breath of fresh air in a room full of carbon monoxide. She was sharp as hell, naturally funny without trying too hard, and completely immune to the kind of bullshit that I had been dealing with for years. Kara worked in corporate finance for a mid-sized firm downtown, and she had clawed her way up from an entry-level analyst position by working the same brutal hours that I was familiar with. It took Kara approximately 5 minutes to size up my family situation completely. "So you're basically paying for your sister to pretend she's an influencer while you work yourself to death," she said, after I explained the dynamic. Yeah, pretty much," I admitted. "And your parents think that's completely normal?" "They think it's temporary." Kara actually laughed out loud at that. "Babe, nothing's more permanent than temporary family help." She was absolutely right, and I was starting to realize it. Kara had her own family horror stories that helped put my situation in perspective. Her brother had tried to guilt her into co-signing a motorcycle loan 2 years earlier, then completely flipped out when she refused to do it. The difference was that her parents had backed her up instead of enabling his irresponsible behavior. "Boundaries aren't suggestions," she told me one night over dinner. "They're requirements for healthy relationships." I was about to learn just how right she was about that statement. The promotion came through in August, and it was everything I had been working toward for years. I went from senior associate to principal in one jump, which came with a $32,000 raise in a corner office with windows. This was the biggest professional win of my entire life, and I couldn't have been more proud of what I had accomplished. The partners made the official announcement during our Wednesday morning meeting, and I watched as half the room's faces shifted from surprise to barely concealed resentment. Some of my colleagues clearly hadn't expected me to get the promotion, and their reactions made it obvious that office politics were alive and well, but I didn't care about their opinions. This promotion meant I would finally be leading my own team, picking my own projects, and having some actual control over my schedule for the first time in years. I decided to throw a party to celebrate this milestone with the people who had actually supported me throughout my journey. Kara helped me plan everything, and she has this incredible ability to make events feel classy and sophisticated without being pretentious or over the top. We rented out the back room at Romano's, this upscale restaurant downtown, that actually had decent food and a proper bar with skilled bartenders. The guest list included my team from work, the partners who had promoted me, college buddies who had stuck around through all the lean years when I was barely making ends meet, and people who had genuinely supported me along the way. Kara had this genius idea to make it a roast and toast format where everyone could share a funny story about my journey to success and then raise a glass in celebration. It kept the atmosphere light but meaningful, and she even printed custom cocktail napkins with "Finally Made It" in gold lettering. My best friend Dylan showed up early to help set up tables and chairs. Dylan doesn't say much in most situations, but when shit hits the fan, he's exactly the guy you want in your corner. We've been tight since college, and he was there during all the times when I was eating cereal for dinner and sleeping on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford proper furniture. He had also watched the entire Beth show unfold over the years, so he understood the family dynamics better than most people. "Your sister coming tonight?" he asked while we arranged chairs around the tables. "Unfortunately, yes. Kara knows exactly what she's walking into," I replied. "She's about to find out," Dylan said with a knowing look, and just nodded while continuing to set up. The thing is, Beth had hated Kara from the very first day they met. It wasn't because Kara had done anything specific to her or treated her poorly. Beth hated Kara because she represented everything that Beth wasn't: successful, independent, financially responsible, and not constantly manufacturing drama for attention. Plus, Kara could see right through Beth's victim act and didn't pretend otherwise like the rest of our family did. Kara's biggest crime in Beth's eyes was having a functioning spine and refusing to enable Beth's behavior. "Your girlfriend thinks she's better than everyone," Beth had told me after meeting Kara for the first time. "Kara's never said a single word about you," I pointed out. "She doesn't have to say anything. I can tell from the way she looks at me," Beth insisted. In Beth's twisted worldview, Kara's mere existence was somehow a personal attack on Beth's lifestyle choices and behavior patterns. September 15th arrived, and Kara showed up looking absolutely incredible in this sleek black dress that somehow managed to be both sexy and professional at the same time. She had even brought a bottle of champagne with a custom label that read, "Congratulations on finally getting what you earned." The woman just gets it on every level. "How are you feeling about tonight?" she asked, while adjusting the room's lighting to something more flattering for photos. "Like I can finally breathe," I told her honestly. "Good. You've earned that feeling," she replied with a smile. Guests started filtering in around 7 p.m., and the energy in the room was fantastic from the start. There were lots of genuine congratulations, and people actually seemed happy to be there celebrating with me. Janet brought her husband, who turned out to be much funnier than I had expected based on Janet's stories about him. My college roommate David had flown in from Boston just for this celebration, which meant the world to me. Even the partners showed up fashionably late, but stayed longer than the polite minimum required time, which was definitely a good sign for future project assignments and my standing in the company. The roast and toast format that Kara had suggested turned out to be absolutely perfect for the crowd. David told the story about me living on 35-cent ramen packets for 6 months straight while job hunting after graduation. Janet shared how I had handled the tech startup client's constant tantrums with diplomatic professionalism that impressed everyone at the firm. Dylan kept his speech short, but brutally honest in the way that only best friends can get away with. "To my boy who proved that persistence beats privilege every damn time," he said, raising his glass. For about 2 solid hours, I genuinely thought the celebration might actually go off without any family drama whatsoever. I was starting to relax and actually enjoy myself for the first time in months. Then Beth walked through the door, and I immediately knew we were in trouble. She was drunk. Not tipsy from a few drinks, not slightly buzzed from pre-gaming. She was full-blown sloppy drunk, with her hair a complete mess and her makeup smeared across her face. She was wearing this skin-tight red dress that screamed, "Look at me," from 3 blocks away, and she had brought along her current boyfriend Kyle, some wannabe SoundCloud rapper who looked like he had been smoking weed in the parking lot for the past hour. Kyle was exactly what you would expect if you had to guess what kind of guy Beth would be dating. He had face tattoos, wore designer clothes that he probably couldn't actually afford, and had that dead-eyed look of someone who had never held a real job in his entire life. He immediately made a beeline for the bar, like he was planning to drink his way through my entire celebration budget. The dude looked like he had been practicing unemployment professionally for years. The first hour after their arrival was actually manageable, which gave me false hope. Beth grabbed a drink and sulked in the corner with Kyle, making snide comments just loud enough for nearby tables to hear, but not quite loud enough to cause an immediate scene. It was classic attention-seeking behavior that most functional adults learn to ignore after middle school. "Is she always like this at family events?" Kara's coworker asked during a conversation about weekend plans. "This is actually her being subtle," I replied with a grimace. Beth didn't say congratulations to me, didn't say hello, didn't acknowledge the achievement we were celebrating. She just grabbed a drink and posted up near the bar, staring at Kara like she was planning a murder while nursing her cocktail. The party was going great despite Beth's presence lurking in the corner. I was giving a quick speech to the room, thanking everyone for coming out to celebrate with me and talking about how good it felt to finally see years of hard work pay off in such a meaningful way. It was standard, humble brag material, but I felt like I had genuinely earned the right to brag a little bit after everything I'd been through. Then Beth stood up from her corner table, and the entire dynamic in the room shifted. "Must be nice," she said loud enough for half the room to hear clearly. I stopped talking mid-sentence and looked at her. "What? Must be nice to have everything handed to you while the rest of us struggle," she continued, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone who's drunk and looking for a fight. The entire room went completely quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Kara's face went from smiling and supportive to stone cold in about 2 seconds flat. Dylan immediately sat down his drink and took a step closer to where I was standing. Janet looked genuinely confused because she knew better than anyone how incredibly hard I had worked for this promotion over the years. "Beth, maybe we should," I started, trying to de-escalate the situation before it got worse. "No, I'm tired of pretending," she interrupted, swaying slightly on her feet and pointing her drink at me like it was some kind of weapon. She was completely loaded and clearly spoiling for a confrontation. Mr. Perfect over here with his fancy promotion and his stuck-up girlfriend, acting like he earned something when mommy and daddy paid for everything. That accusation was absolutely rich coming from someone whose entire adult life had been subsidized by my paychecks for the past 6 years. But logic has never been a narcissist's strong suit, especially when they're drunk and performing for an audience. That's when Kara stood up from her seat, and I could tell by her posture that she was done playing nice. "Excuse me," Kara said, her voice perfectly calm and controlled. "Did you just say my boyfriend didn't earn his promotion?" "I said what I said," Beth replied, with that defiant attitude that drunk people get when they think they're being brave. "Cool. Just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly before I responded," Kara said with a smile that wasn't friendly at all. Then Kara turned to address the entire room, like she was giving a professional presentation to a boardroom full of executives. "For anyone who doesn't know, this is Beth, the sister who's been living off my boyfriend's paycheck for 6 years while he worked 65-hour weeks to put himself through school and build a career from scratch. The same sister who called him selfish last month when he wouldn't bankroll her essential oils pyramid scheme." The room was absolutely dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Beth's face went bright red, but Kara wasn't finished yet. "You don't know what you're talking about," Beth stammered, clearly not expecting anyone to call her out so directly. "Don't I? Should we talk about the car payments, the rent money, the MacBook, That's when Beth completely and utterly lost her shit. She threw her drink with full force, hurling it at the wall behind the bar where it exploded and shattered glass everywhere. Then she grabbed the nearest thing she could find, which happened to be a decorative vase filled with flowers, and smashed it on the floor with both hands. "Screw all of you!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. "Screw this fake party and fuck your stuck-up bitch girlfriend!" Kyle tried to grab her arm to restrain her. "Babe, maybe we should—" "Don't touch me!" she shrieked, jerking away from him violently. Security was there in 30 seconds flat, having heard the commotion and glass breaking from the main dining room. Dylan had already moved between Beth and Kara without saying a single word, just positioning himself as a physical barrier in case things escalated further. He wasn't being aggressive or confrontational, just being a wall of protection for the people who mattered. Kyle was desperately trying to drag Beth toward the exit while she kept screaming at the top of her lungs. "You think you're so much better than me? You're nothing! Nothing!" she yelled, her voice cracking with rage and alcohol. As the security guards were physically escorting her out of the restaurant, she turned around and pointed directly at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You'll pay for this!" she screamed as they dragged her through the door. The room was completely dead silent for about 10 seconds after she disappeared. Everyone was processing what they had just witnessed, and you could feel the uncomfortable tension hanging in the air like smoke. Then Kara picked up her glass, took a calm sip of her wine, and said with perfect composure, "Well, that was entertaining. Should we get back to celebrating people who actually accomplish things? The room erupted in nervous laughter, and somehow the party actually managed to recover from Beth's public meltdown. People started talking again. The bartender cleaned up the broken glass, and the celebration continued. But I knew deep down that this wasn't over. Beth doesn't make threats that she doesn't plan to follow through on, and the look in her eyes when security dragged her out told me she was already planning her revenge. David came up to me afterward, shaking his head in disbelief. Dude, I always thought you were exaggerating about her behavior when you told us stories. I wish I was exaggerating, I replied honestly. Nothing says family values like having a public meltdown at your brother's promotion party, he said with dark humor. Janet approached me near the end of the night when most of the guests were starting to leave. Is she always like that at family events? That was actually pretty restrained for her, I told her, which made Janet's eyes widen in surprise. Jesus Christ. Well, for what it's worth, everyone here knows exactly how hard you've worked for this promotion. Don't let family drama diminish what you've accomplished tonight. The morning after the party, I woke up to 19 missed calls from my parents, and about 32 text messages from Beth that ranged from fake apologies to outright death threats. Meanwhile, Kara was already up making coffee in the kitchen like absolutely nothing had happened the night before. Sleep well? She asked casually, as if we hadn't just witnessed a complete family implosion 12 hours earlier. Like a baby. How about you? Great. Nothing helps me sleep better than watching entitled people face consequences for their actions, she replied with a satisfied smile. I love this woman more than words can express. The text messages from Beth were like a masterclass in emotional manipulation tactics. First came the fake remorse. I'm so sorry about last night. I was just hurt and confused about everything. Then came the anger. You humiliated me in front of all those people for no reason. Then came the threats. You have no idea what I'm capable of when people push me too far. Then she cycled back to fake vulnerability. I just miss having my brother in my life. She was systematically cycling through every single emotional manipulation technique in her playbook until something stuck and got the response she wanted from me. My parents showed up at my apartment at 9:15 a.m. sharp, and they didn't bother calling first to see if it was a convenient time. They just started pounding on the door like the building was on fire, and they were the volunteer fire department. Dad looked genuinely embarrassed about the whole situation, but Mom looked absolutely pissed at me rather than at Beth, which told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. We need to talk, Mom said, before I could even say good morning or invite them inside. About what exactly? I asked, though I already knew the answer. About what you're going to do to fix this situation with your sister, she replied, in that tone that suggested this was somehow my responsibility to solve. Kara appeared behind me with her coffee mug, looking perfectly composed despite the early hour and unexpected visitors. Morning, everyone. Beautiful day, isn't it? She said pleasantly. Mom completely ignored her greeting and looked directly at me. Beth is absolutely devastated about what happened last night. She feels attacked and humiliated by what occurred at your party. She should feel humiliated, I said firmly. She acted like a complete psychopath in front of 37 people who were there to celebrate my professional achievement. She was overwhelmed by the situation. You know how sensitive she is when she's feeling emotional, Mom replied, as if Beth's emotional state somehow excused her throwing drinks and breaking property. Sensitive? That's what we were calling public meltdowns and property destruction now? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad finally spoke up, looking uncomfortable but determined to support Mom's position. Look, son, we think the best thing for everyone would be if you apologize to your sister for what happened. Apologize for what exactly? I asked, genuinely confused about what I could possibly need to apologize for. For letting your girlfriend attack her the way she did, Dad said, gesturing toward Kara. Kara set down her coffee mug with just a little too much force, making a sharp sound against the counter. I'm sorry, but what exactly did I do wrong? She asked, with perfect politeness that barely concealed her anger. You provoked her when you knew she was already emotional and upset, Mom said accusingly. You made the situation much worse than it needed to be. I stated facts about the financial arrangement between your children. If facts provoke her, that's not my problem to solve, Kara replied calmly. She's family, Dad said to me, as if that somehow trumped everything else that had happened. Kara's not wrong, though, Kara said with a smile. But it definitely wasn't a nice smile. You're absolutely right. I'm not family, which means I don't have to pretend her behavior is acceptable or enable her tantrums like the rest of you do. That's your job. My parents looked at me expectantly. like I was supposed to control my girlfriend's responses and make her apologize for telling the truth. "I think you should leave," I said firmly, opening the door wider. "We're not done discussing this situation," Mom said, clearly not expecting to be dismissed. "Yeah, we are," I replied, and waited for them to walk out. After they left, I made a decision that was long overdue and should have happened years earlier. I opened my laptop and started the process of cutting all financial ties with Beth. All of them. Every single one, without exception. First on the list was the credit card I had given Beth for emergencies 3 years ago. I called the customer service number and requested to cancel it immediately. The representative asked why I wanted to close the account, and I simply said, "The authorized user is no longer authorized to use this card." Clean and simple, no drama required. The rep walked me through the cancellation process like she had done this exact thing countless times before. Apparently, family financial breakups are far more common than you would think, and credit card companies have streamlined procedures for these situations. She mentioned that the card would be deactivated immediately, and any pending charges would be automatically declined. Perfect. Second was the car insurance policy where Beth was listed as a covered driver. I called my insurance company and requested her immediate removal from the policy. This one was slightly more complicated and required some paperwork, but I had to prove that I was the primary policyholder and that she didn't have any legitimate legal claim to coverage. The insurance agent was surprisingly helpful once I explained the situation to her. Their company policy was crystal clear. As long as I was the primary policyholder and she wasn't my spouse, I could remove her from coverage immediately without her consent. The agent mentioned that this change would save me approximately $190 per month, which was a nice bonus I hadn't even considered. Third were all the streaming service accounts she had been using for years: Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon Prime. I systematically changed all the passwords and removed her access. While I was at it, I also changed the passwords on my HBO Max, Hulu, and Disney Plus accounts. Might as well be thorough about cutting off her entertainment access and see how much she really valued our relationship when she had to pay for her own streaming services. Next, I canceled the automatic bank transfer I had set up 2 years earlier to help with her monthly rent payments. The bank representative tried to confirm that this was intentional since the transfer had been running automatically for such a long time. "Very intentional," I told him firmly. Then I called the student loan servicer and began the process of removing myself as the co-signer on her private student loans. This required some paperwork and documentation, but it was definitely doable since she had technically been making the payments on time. With my money, of course, but the payments were current. Within approximately 2 hours, I had essentially cut off Beth's entire lifestyle and financial support system. My phone started buzzing with notifications immediately. First came text messages, then phone calls, then increasingly unhinged voicemails that got progressively more desperate and threatening as the day went on. The last voicemail was just Beth screaming incoherently for 3 solid minutes. "What the hell is wrong with you? You can't just abandon me like this when I need you most. I need that money to survive. You're completely destroying my life." No, sweetheart. I was finally stopping the destruction of my own life. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced for the second time that week. This time, they looked absolutely furious from the moment I opened the door, and there was no pretense of politeness or family concern. "We need to talk about what you're doing to your sister," Dad said, literally pushing past me into the apartment without being invited inside. "What I'm doing? She destroyed my promotion party and called Kara a bitch in front of 37 people, I replied, following him into my own living room. "She was emotional and overwhelmed," Mom snapped. "You know how she gets when she's dealing with stressful situations. She's 22 years old, not 4. It's time to stop making excuses for her behavior," I said firmly. Dad stepped forward with an aggressive posture that I hadn't seen from him before. "You're being completely unreasonable about this whole situation. That girl depends on you financially, and you know it. That's exactly the problem. She's become completely dependent instead of learning to be self-sufficient," I replied. "It's your responsibility as her older brother to take care of her when she needs help," Dad continued, as if being born first somehow made me financially responsible for Beth's choices for the rest of our lives. My responsibility ended when she made a drunken scene at my celebration and disrespected my girlfriend in front of my colleagues and friends, I said firmly. Mom started her guilt trip routine, which I recognized from years of experience. "We raised you better than this, Jake. So what, now that you got a promotion and have some money, you're acting up and forgetting about family? Family takes care of family," she continued. "You have all this money now and she has nothing. How can you live with yourself? She has nothing because she's never worked for anything in her entire adult life, I pointed out. I'm not running a charity organization here. So you're just going to let her suffer and struggle? Mom asked, as if Beth's financial problems were somehow a natural disaster beyond anyone's control. I'm going to let her grow up and learn to be an adult, I replied. They kept pushing harder and harder, demanding that I fix this situation immediately and be the bigger person in the conflict. When I continued to refuse their demands, Dad actually had the nerve to say that I was selfish and had forgotten where I came from, as if my success had somehow corrupted my character. I walked to the door and opened it wide. Get out of my apartment and don't come back unless you're ready to apologize for enabling her bullshit behavior for 6 years. They left, but not quietly or gracefully. Mom was crying dramatically about losing both her children and how the family was falling apart. Dad was muttering under his breath about how success had changed me and made me cold. Success hadn't changed me at all. It had just given me the financial freedom to stop being everyone else's personal ATM machine. That same afternoon, the TikTok campaign started, and Beth found her true calling as a professional victim with a social media platform. She posted a video of herself crying in her car with the caption, "When your family abandons you for speaking the truth." It got about 650 views, and a few sympathy comments from girls who didn't know the full story behind her tears. The next day, she escalated with a storytime video titled, "How My Toxic Brother Chose His Girlfriend Over Family." This one got 200 views, and the comment section was split between people calling bullshit on her story and others sharing their own family drama in solidarity. Day 3 brought us, "Signs Your Family Member is a Narcissist," a thread. This video got 300 views and featured Beth reading directly from some pop psychology website, applying every single negative trait to me while conveniently ignoring her own problematic behavior patterns. She was systematically building an audience by turning our family drama into entertainment content. Beth had finally found her calling: professional victim with a side hustle in manufactured outrage and social media sympathy. Kara thought the whole thing was absolutely hilarious. "Oh my god, she's literally monetizing her victim complex," Kara said, while scrolling through the videos on her phone. "That's actually kind of impressive in a twisted way. Should I be worried about this social media campaign?" I asked. "About what? Her telling the internet that you stopped bankrolling her lifestyle? Most people with functioning brains will see right through it," Kara replied confidently. Kara was right, mostly. The comments on Beth's videos were absolutely brutal once people started seeing through her act. Lots of viewers were calling her out for sounding incredibly entitled and asking pointed questions about why a 22-year-old couldn't support herself financially. People were pointing out the obvious inconsistencies in her story and questioning why she expected her brother to fund her lifestyle indefinitely. But some people actually bought into her victim narrative. The comment sections became echo chambers of people sharing their own grievances about toxic family members and narcissistic siblings. Beth was absolutely eating up the attention and validation, responding to every supportive comment and building relationships with her new online supporters. The TikTok videos got progressively more unhinged as time went on. She started making videos outside our apartment building, posting pictures of our car, and tagging Kara in posts where she called her a homewrecker and a manipulative bitch. One particularly disturbing video showed her sitting in the parking lot of our building at 2:30 in the morning, crying about how I had abandoned her and destroyed her life. The timestamp on that video proved she had been stalking our apartment in the middle of the night like some kind of deranged ex-girlfriend. But she managed to frame it as her being too heartbroken to sleep and needing to feel close to her family. The manipulation was honestly impressive in its creativity. The comments on that particular video were telling about her audience. Half the viewers were calling her out for obvious stalking behavior and suggesting she needed professional help. The other half were encouraging her to stand up for herself and not let them intimidate you into silence. "This is getting seriously weird," Dylan said when I showed him the videos during one of our regular check-ins. "She's clearly escalating her behavior instead of backing off. What am I supposed to do about it?" I asked, feeling somewhat helpless about the social media campaign. Dylan didn't answer directly, but he just said, "I know a guy who handles social media issues for people." Dylan's connections were always mysteriously vague, but surprisingly effective when situations required intervention. 2 days later, Beth's TikTok account got permanently suspended for harassment and doxing violations. All her videos disappeared overnight, and she had to start completely over from 0 followers with a new account. The platform had apparently decided that posting pictures of our home and tagging Kara in harassing content violated their community guidelines. Beth immediately knew it was me who had caused her account suspension. The angry voicemail she left proved it beyond any doubt. "You think you can destroy my life and get away with it? I'll freaking destroy yours in return!" she screamed into my voicemail at 3 a.m. Kara listened to the voicemail the next morning and raised an eyebrow with amusement. She's really committed to this villain arc, isn't she? But Beth didn't take the TikTok shutdown well at all. Instead of backing off and reconsidering her approach, she doubled down and got creative with her revenge fantasy. It started small and seemingly innocent, but quickly escalated into genuine harassment. First, food deliveries we didn't order started showing up at our door at random times. Pizza deliveries, Chinese takeout, grocery deliveries, all cash on delivery, all ordered using fake names, but with our address. We'd get knocks on the door at all hours from confused delivery drivers expecting payment for food we never requested. Then she escalated the harassment campaign. She systematically signed us up for every spam mailing list she could find online. Our mailbox got completely flooded with catalogs, flyers, promotional materials, and junk mail. Every day brought a new avalanche of unwanted mail that we had to sort through and dispose of. The most infuriating escalation was when she put our apartment up for rent on Craigslist with completely fake details and my personal phone number as the contact. I started getting calls at all hours of the day and night from people wanting to tour the place we supposedly had available. The Craigslist listing described our apartment as a luxury downtown loft available for $850 below market rate, which explained exactly why my phone wouldn't stop ringing with interested renters. She had made it sound like the deal of the century, so desperate apartment hunters were calling me constantly throughout the day and night. The absolute final straw was when Beth somehow managed to get Kara's work email address and sent a detailed message to Kara's boss, claiming that Kara was having an inappropriate affair with a married client. It was complete and utter bullshit, but Kara had to sit through an extremely uncomfortable HR meeting to explain that her boyfriend's psychotic sister was actively trying to sabotage her career out of spite. Kara handled the situation like the absolute champion she is. HR sided with her completely once they saw the clear pattern of harassment and stalking behavior that Beth had been engaging in for weeks. But I was completely done playing defense against Beth's escalating attacks on our lives. "You know what? We need to take a break from all this insanity," I told Kara that night after the work incident. "Let's take a vacation, clear our heads, and let this shit cool down while we're gone." "Where were you thinking?" Kara asked, clearly ready for some distance from the situation. "Cancun. 1 week, beautiful beaches, good drinks, and most importantly, no cell service for Beth to blow up our phones," I suggested. Kara grinned widely. "Book it immediately." Dylan thought we were essentially running away from the problem instead of dealing with it head-on. "You sure that's the right move?" he asked when I told him about our vacation plans. "It's strategic. Let her completely exhaust herself throwing tantrums at an empty apartment," I explained. "Plus, Kara needs a real break from this constant harassment." "Fair enough. You want me to keep an eye on things while you're gone?" Dylan offered. "Would you mind?" I asked, grateful for his support. "Already planning on it," he replied. "That's Dylan for you. Doesn't ask unnecessary questions, just handles business when it needs to be handled." We left for Cancun on a Thursday morning with a direct flight and reservations at a beachfront resort with all the amenities. 5-star accommodations, an infinity pool overlooking the ocean, and room service that didn't come with a side of family drama. For 6 glorious days, we didn't think about Beth even once. Kara got an amazing tan, and I actually relaxed completely for the first time in months. We remembered what our relationship was actually like without a psychotic third party, constantly trying to destroy it from the sidelines. It was like rediscovering why we fell for each other in the first place. "I forgot what it felt like to not be constantly looking over our shoulders," Kara said on day 3 while sipping a margarita that was stronger than it looked. "This is what normal people's relationships are actually like." "Normal people don't have to consider getting restraining orders against their siblings," I replied, enjoying my own drink. "Sweetheart, normal people don't have siblings like Beth," Kara pointed out with a laugh. We were drinking margaritas on the beach Tuesday afternoon when Kara's phone buzzed with a text from her friend Maya. You might want to check Instagram. Beth's having a moment," the message read. Kara opened the app and immediately started laughing. "Oh, she's completely lost it now," she said, showing me the screen. Beth had posted a series of Instagram stories outside our apartment building over the past several days. There were pictures of our door, our windows, our parking spot, all with captions like hiding like cowards and can't face the truth, and karma's coming for them. The timestamps showed she had been there multiple times throughout the week, morning, afternoon, and evening. She was literally conducting surveillance on an empty apartment like some kind of amateur private investigator. She's literally stalking our empty apartment, Kara said, shaking her head in disbelief. That's actually kind of sad when you think about it. We screenshotted everything for evidence and went back to our margaritas. Let her wear herself out stalking an empty building. That was a big mistake on my part. I had no idea that things could actually get much worse than they already were. We flew back to town Sunday evening, tired but refreshed and ready to deal with whatever tantrum was waiting for us at home. The Uber dropped us off in front of our building around 9:15 p.m., and that's when we saw the full extent of the damage Beth had inflicted while we were gone. My car, the one I had worked my ass off to buy and had been making payments on for 2 years, was completely and utterly trashed. All 4 tires had been slashed with what looked like a knife or box cutter. The windshield was cracked from corner to corner in a spiderweb pattern. The word bitch was keyed into the driver's side door in letters about 6 inches tall, deep enough that you could feel the grooves with your finger. Someone had poured what looked like motor oil all over the hood, creating a sticky black mess that had been baking in the sun for days. The damage was extensive, personal, and clearly took significant time and effort to complete. "Holy shit!" Kara said, immediately pulling out her phone to take pictures of everything. "This is going to cost her big time!" The vandalism wasn't random or opportunistic. Someone had spent considerable time making sure every single surface of my car was completely screwed up. The keying went deep enough to reach the bare metal underneath the paint. The windshield crack ran from corner to corner in an intricate pattern. Even the side mirrors were smashed into pieces. Our apartment door was somehow even worse than the car. It was completely covered in dried egg, like someone had systematically hurled 24 raw eggs at it over multiple days. The smell was absolutely horrific. Dried egg mixed with week-old heat and humidity creates a stench that could knock a buzzard off a garbage truck. "This is going to cost her a fortune," Kara said, continuing to document everything with her phone camera. Beth had really outdone herself this time. Most people just key cars when they're pissed off and want to cause damage. She had gone full Jackson Pollock with breakfast food and automotive destruction. "Please tell me we have security cameras in this building," I said, looking around for any surveillance equipment. We did have cameras, and Beth had been dumb enough to commit all of this vandalism during broad daylight while looking directly at multiple security cameras. Dylan showed up 20 minutes after I called him, took one look at the extensive damage, and said with grim determination, "Time to end this shit once and for all." The building manager was surprisingly helpful when we explained the situation. It turned out that Beth's vandalism spree had kept several tenants awake during the night, and they were absolutely pissed about the noise and commotion. He pulled the security footage immediately and burned it to a DVD for us to take to the police. "Saturday afternoon, broad daylight, multiple camera angles," he explained while fast-forwarding through the footage. "Your sister's either incredibly stupid or incredibly confident about not getting caught." The video evidence was absolutely beautiful from a legal standpoint. Crystal clear shots of Beth and Kyle showing up with supplies like they were planning some kind of home improvement project. Their faces were completely visible. The license plate on Kyle's car was clearly readable, and the audio was picking up Beth's laughter while she methodically keyed my car. The footage showed over an hour of premeditated destruction. 20 minutes spent systematically destroying the car. Another 30 minutes throwing eggs at our door with professional dedication and thoroughness. Kyle looked nervous and uncomfortable the entire time, constantly looking around like he expected to get caught. But Beth was clearly having the absolute time of her life. "She's literally waving at the camera here," the building manager pointed out, pausing the video at a particularly incriminating moment. "I've never seen anything this deliberately stupid in my entire career. Criminal mastermind, my ass." Beth had the stealth skills and situational awareness of a drunk rhinoceros. Kara and I went to the police station first thing Monday morning, armed with our evidence folder, the security footage DVD, and documentation of everything that had happened. We filed comprehensive reports for vandalism, harassment, and criminal damage to property. The desk sergeant took one look at the high-definition video footage and said it was pretty much cut and dried from a legal perspective. "Do you want to press full charges against both individuals?" he asked. Hell yes, we did. Every single charge they could think of. Plus, we wanted to file for a restraining order to stop this escalating pattern of harassment. The cop walked us through the entire legal process step by step. Criminal charges would be filed based on the video evidence, and they would issue arrest warrants for both Beth and Kyle. The restraining order was a separate legal proceeding that would go through family court, but the criminal evidence would definitely support our case for protection. With video footage this clear and comprehensive, he figured Beth would probably end up taking a plea deal rather than going to trial. Most people don't want to face a jury when there's HD footage of them systematically committing multiple felonies while laughing about it. The restraining order paperwork was filed that same afternoon, and we had a court date scheduled within 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I called my auto insurance company to report the vandalism and start the claims process. They took one look at the police report and the security footage and cut me a check for $500 to cover all the damage to my car. But here's the thing that Beth probably didn't consider when she was having her revenge fantasy. Insurance companies don't just eat costs like that and move on. They actively pursue subrogation against whoever caused the damage to recover their money. The insurance adjuster explained that they would be aggressively pursuing reimbursement from whoever was responsible for the destruction. A criminal conviction makes it much easier for us, but the video evidence is solid either way, he told me. We'll be going after them for every penny. Beth was about to get a very expensive education in the real-world consequences of criminal behavior. My parents called Tuesday morning, and Mom was already crying before I even finished saying hello. The police came to our house yesterday. They arrested Beth and took her away in handcuffs, she sobbed into the phone. Good, I replied without any sympathy. How can you say that? She's your sister, your own flesh and blood, Mom continued through her tears. She's a criminal who destroyed my property and has been harassing my girlfriend's employer, I said firmly. Actions have consequences. We need to sit down and talk about this as a family. Can you please just... I hung up on her mid-sentence. I was done having conversations about how I needed to fix Beth's problems or enable her behavior. Kara was simultaneously handling the apartment door situation like the organized professional she is. She called a specialized cleaning service that dealt with vandalism cleanup, documented everything thoroughly for our renter's insurance claim, and took about 50 photos for additional evidence. The cleaning crew had apparently seen this kind of thing before and knew exactly how to handle dried egg removal. How much is this whole thing going to end up costing her? Kara asked, while watching the cleaning crew scrape the last of the dried egg off our door with industrial tools. I did some quick mental math. Between the car repair costs, my insurance deductible, the door cleaning service, court costs, and legal fees, we're probably looking at around $8,500. Maybe more if the judge decides to get creative with punitive damages. Kara smiled with satisfaction. That's a lot of essential oils she'll have to sell to pay that off. Wednesday afternoon, Dylan sent me a brief text message. Beth made bail. She's staying at your parents' house. Just thought you should know. Of course my parents had bailed her out instead of letting her sit in jail and think about the consequences of her actions. They were still enabling her behavior even after she had committed multiple felonies and been arrested with video evidence. My phone started ringing about an hour later. It was Dad this time, and his tone was much more serious than usual. Son, we need to meet in person and discuss this situation. This has gone way too far, he said. You're absolutely right. It went way too far when she trashed my car and egged my apartment door, I replied. She made a serious mistake, but she committed multiple felonies. There's a significant legal difference, I interrupted. Can't we work this out as a family without involving the courts? We're not family anymore, Dad. We're plaintiff and defendant now, I said, and hung up the phone. I immediately called my lawyer to make sure the restraining order paperwork was moving forward on schedule and to confirm our court date. Thursday morning, I received a phone call from Beth's court-appointed public defender. His client wanted to discuss a potential settlement to avoid going to trial and having this case drag through the court system for months. She's prepared to offer full restitution for the damages, he explained. Plus, she would agree to stay away from you and your girlfriend permanently. How much restitution is she actually prepared to offer? I asked, curious about whether Beth had any realistic understanding of the financial damage she had caused. She was prepared to offer $2,200, he said, as if this was a reasonable amount. I actually laughed out loud at that number. The car damage alone was $5,100 according to my insurance company's estimate. Add in the door cleaning, my insurance deductible, emotional distress, and punitive damages for the months of harassment. And we were realistically looking at closer to $13,000 in total costs. That amount seems excessive to him, the public defender continued when I explained the actual financial impact. I told him that vandalism, stalking, and months of systematic harassment were pretty excessive too, so we were even. He said he would call me back with a better offer, but he never did. Apparently, Beth wasn't interested in taking responsibility for the full extent of her actions. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Kara and I showed up to family court with our comprehensive evidence folder, our lawyer, and Dylan for moral support. Beth showed up with my parents flanking her like bodyguards and her public defender looking like he wished he was anywhere else in the world. This was about to get very interesting. Monday morning, 9:15 a.m. sharp. Family court was exactly as depressing and bureaucratic as you would expect. The fluorescent lighting was harsh, the chairs were uncomfortable, and the whole atmosphere felt like a DMV office where people's lives got decided instead of license renewals. Beth sat across the courtroom with my parents and her overwhelmed public defender. She had clearly dressed up for the occasion in what I was pretty sure was Mom's church outfit, trying to look like a responsible adult instead of the unhinged stalker she had become over the past several months. The costume change was impressive, but you can't really dress up crazy behavior or make it look reasonable. Our lawyer had that calm, professional confidence that comes from dealing with unstable people for a living. She told us beforehand that this was one of the more clear-cut restraining order cases she had seen in years. The video evidence eliminated any possibility of he-said-she-said arguments, and Beth's escalating pattern of behavior was thoroughly documented. The judge looked tired already, and it wasn't even 9:30 in the morning. You could tell he had probably seen dozens of these family disputes and was ready to cut through any bullshit to get to the facts. Our lawyer presented our case methodically and professionally. She laid out the timeline of financial harassment, the TikTok stalking campaign, the fake Craigslist ads, the harassment of Kara's workplace, and finally the property damage that had resulted in criminal charges. She had printed screenshots of everything, had the security footage queued up on a laptop, and presented a comprehensive timeline that made Beth's escalation pattern crystal clear. The security footage was devastating when played in the courtroom. Watching Beth laugh while she systematically keyed my car and threw eggs at our door made it impossible to argue that this was some kind of emotional outburst or temporary lapse in judgment. This was clearly premeditated, deliberate destruction carried out over more than an hour. The judge watched the entire video without any expression on his face. When it finished playing, he turned his attention to Beth's public defender, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor beneath his feet. The poor bastard tried to argue that Beth had simply acted inappropriately during a period of emotional distress, and that our response was disproportionate to the situation. He suggested that family therapy might be more appropriate than legal action, but the judge wasn't having any of that nonsense. He cut through the bullshit immediately and told the public defender that he didn't want to hear about feelings or family dynamics. He only wanted to know whether Beth disputed the facts presented in the video evidence. She didn't dispute anything. She couldn't really argue with HD footage of herself committing crimes while laughing about it. When the judge called Beth's name, she stood up looking genuinely scared for the first time in months. Her confident, victim-playing persona had completely evaporated in the face of actual legal consequences. The judge didn't waste any time with pleasantries or gentle questioning. He laid into her about the months-long harassment campaign that had systematically escalated and culminated in thousands of dollars in property damage. His tone was stern and disapproving as he explained that her behavior constituted a clear pattern of criminal harassment and stalking. He asked if she had anything to say for herself before he made his ruling. Beth gave this pathetic, rehearsed speech about being upset over family issues and making bad choices during an emotional time. She claimed she never meant for things to go so far and just wanted her family back together. The judge looked completely unimpressed by her performance. He told her straight up that she was 22 years old, not a child having a tantrum. She was an adult who had made deliberate choices to commit multiple crimes because she didn't like her family members' reasonable boundaries. Then came the absolutely beautiful part that made all of this legal hassle worthwhile. He granted the permanent restraining order without hesitation. Beth was immediately prohibited from contacting, approaching, or coming within 500 feet of us, our residences, our workplaces, or our vehicles. She was also specifically banned from posting about us on social media or any other public platform, which would put an end to her victim narrative campaign. Beth started crying harder, but the judge wasn't finished delivering consequences. He ordered full restitution in the amount of $13,247 to cover property damage, insurance deductibles, legal fees, and court costs. Payment plan arrangements could be made through the clerk's office, but the full amount was owed regardless of her financial situation. Beth's sobs got even louder as the reality of owing over $13,000 hit her. My parents looked like they had been physically punched in the stomach as they realized they would probably end up paying for Beth's crimes. Then the judge did something I wasn't expecting at all. He extended the restraining order to include my parents as well. You've chosen to enable and facilitate your daughter's criminal behavior instead of holding her accountable for her actions, he said, looking directly at them. Your repeated attempts to contact the petitioner after being asked to stop constitute harassment by proxy. The gavel came down with finality. Case closed, justice served. Outside the courthouse, my parents tried to approach us one more time, but Dylan immediately stepped between us and politely reminded them that they were now legally prohibited from any contact whatsoever. They walked to their car looking completely defeated and confused, probably wondering how their enabling strategy had backfired so spectacularly. The aftermath was even more satisfying than I had hoped it would be. Beth couldn't pay the 13 by 247 restitution amount because, shocking surprise, she had no money or assets. She had to get her first real job ever at GameStop to make the court-ordered monthly payments of $420s. The judge had been very clear that failure to make payments would result in additional legal consequences. She moved back in with my parents permanently because she couldn't afford her own place anymore without my financial support. Kyle disappeared completely once the legal bills started piling up and reality set in. Turns out wannabe SoundCloud rappers aren't particularly loyal when their girlfriends owe five-figure court judgments. The restraining order changed absolutely everything about our daily lives. No more angry texts at all hours, no more surprise visits from family members, no more harassment campaigns or manufactured emergencies. For the first time since I was 20 years old, my phone wasn't constantly buzzing with Beth's latest crisis or demand for money. The silence was absolutely beautiful. I had forgotten what it felt like to live without constant family drama and financial manipulation. My parents tried to circumvent the restraining order by having relatives call me on their behalf, but I shut that down immediately. I made it very clear to every family member that I wasn't interested in hearing from them or about them. The family tree pruned itself pretty quickly after that. Dylan kept tabs on Beth's situation through mutual friends and had some fun sabotaging her attempts to rebuild her online presence and victim narrative. Every new TikTok account she created got reported for ban evasion within a week, forcing her to start over from 0 followers repeatedly. She couldn't maintain any momentum or build the audience she needed to monetize her sob story. 6 months later, Kara and I moved to a much better apartment across town, and we made sure not to leave any forwarding address with the old building. Our new place had excellent security features: a doorman, secured parking garage, comprehensive camera systems, and professional security staff. It felt like finally living in peace instead of constantly looking over our shoulders. The best part was watching Beth's inevitable downward spiral through the mutual friends who still kept Dylan informed. Without my financial support propping up her entire lifestyle, she had to face reality for the first time in her adult life. Real job requirements, real bills, real consequences for her choices and behavior. The essential oils MLM business opportunity never materialized, obviously. Turns out you actually need money to lose money in those pyramid schemes, and Beth was now working retail to pay court-ordered restitution instead of investing in get-rich-quick fantasies. Kara and I got engaged 8 months after the court hearing. Dylan earned the honor of being my best man. He had definitely earned that position through his unwavering support during the whole Beth situation. The proposal was intimate and perfect, with no family drama or financial manipulation clouding the moment. The marketing firm where I work made me junior partner just before our first anniversary, making me the youngest person in company history to reach that level. My career was finally flourishing without the constant financial drain and emotional stress of managing Beth's manufactured crises. Meanwhile, Beth is still working retail at GameStop, still living with our parents in their house, and still making those $420 monthly payments to me for the next 3 years. According to my aunt, who occasionally updates me despite the family drama, she's not handling the transition to actual responsibility very well. My parents are finally stuck babysitting the monster they created and enabled for years, but now they don't have my bank account as a buffer to absorb Beth's tantrums and financial irresponsibility. They're getting the full Beth experience without any financial safety net to cushion the impact. According to the Family Gossip Network, Beth throws the same explosive tantrums she used to throw at me when things don't go her way. The difference is that now my parents can't call me to fix whatever crisis she's manufactured or transfer money to make the problem disappear. They have to deal with her behavior directly and face the consequences of their enabling choices. Dylan ran into Beth at the mall last week while he was shopping with his girlfriend. She was working her shift at the GameStop counter, and he decided to have a little fun with the encounter. She apparently asked how I was doing, trying to fish for information about my life. He told her I was doing great. Better than ever, actually. Then he bought a video game from her register and left exactly a 1-cent tip on the receipt, just to make a point about how far she'd fallen from her entitled princess lifestyle. Life is incredibly good right now. Kara and I are building something real together without toxic family members trying to sabotage our relationship or drain our resources. We're planning our wedding, advancing in our careers, and actually enjoying the fruits of our hard work instead of subsidizing someone else's irresponsible choices. I finally have the financial freedom to invest in my own future instead of throwing money into the bottomless pit of Beth's manufactured emergencies. The silence from my family is golden. No more guilt trips, no more crisis calls, no more demands for money disguised as temporary family help. Beth learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and that the real world doesn't care about your feelings when you destroy other people's property and harass their employers. The legal system doesn't enable bad behavior the way our parents did for years. Sometimes the best thing you can do for toxic family members is let them face the natural consequences of their choices instead of constantly rescuing them from reality. Beth finally had to grow up when she lost access to my bank account, and my parents finally had to confront the monster they created when they lost me as their go-between. The restraining order was the best investment I ever made. 3 years of monthly payments at 420s each, and Beth will have finally paid for the damage she caused. Justice served, lesson learned, and boundaries firmly established. That's how you handle family members who think they're entitled to your money and your life.